Welcome back to the Beau Leadership Group Podcast. Today's title is Vision is the Asset. What Ferguson, Solomon, Rothschild, and Asaph can teach us about peace, power, and purpose. Again, welcome back to the Beau Leadership Podcast, leaders, where we work to get an ROI on our leadership investment decisions. The title of today's show, Vision is the Asset. An asset is something that creates cash flow or marginal revenue product in my mind, and vision is very conceptual, but it's massively important for the leader and for developing your own human capital. In fact, leaders are hired for their vision and fired for their lack of vision. Some CEOs from great personal cash flow have to return and forfeit stock options and other perks when they miss the mark because of a lack of vision. When you grow your ability to have vision, you also work to align your vision with your influence, which can deliver a payoff of internal peace that feels good in your heart, purpose, and power. So don't miss today's episode and the title, Vision is Your Asset, because you should write it down and realize that your vision is your asset and it can pay. Part of what it gives you is that satisfaction and fulfillment that many people miss out on. Part of what got me going on this idea of vision as an asset is some friends of mine, and these are friends that were never clients, but friends that were vice president level and never seemed to be able to break into the executive C-suite. They would be moved around from operations or sales or IT, but they could never break into the upper ranks. Yet these same people were some of the smartest people I knew. Unbelievably bright people, math majors, IT professionals, engineering degrees from Caltech and fancy schools, and people I cared about. These were people that I wondered why it was they couldn't advance when they would apply, because they were applying for these C-suite positions, but not getting them. And these people were smart. I mean, really smart. Accounting, no problem. Advanced math, IT issues, no problem. They lacked what we talked about in previous episodes, that aperture, where they could pull away a little bit and see what's around the corner. They didn't understand beyond counting the beans. They understood how to pack the packets in the IP and internet technologies, but they didn't have the vision to say, we need to be looking at this new thing because I think it's going to be big. Instead, they focused on knowing more than anyone else in the room about IT or accounting principles so they could be the smartest person at the table. And that works in school, but it doesn't work when you're a leader. They worked so they could be the smartest person at the table on those issues, which is great. And it keeps you at the vice president level and very valued. And you end up being satisfied that you're the smartest person on certain issues. But if you don't have the vision to look forward to what's next, and you aren't working not only to grow yourself, but to grow others in the organization, you may be lacking that aperture, that feature, that vision that takes the organization from shepherding one flock of sheep to managing sheep and cattle, or something in terms of a major allocation shift that could benefit all. So not just you in the room, but benefit all. So think about this as a key question for your career. What if the greatest wealth you could ever acquire wasn't sitting in a bank, but in your ability to see what others don't and look for those trends and things that could lead you and your organization towards that grand destiny? As I've said before, the leader must know the way and show the way and see the way for his team, and ideally for the entire organization in the marketplace. The best leaders don't just check the weather at the golf course. They also check the political climate for nuggets of gold that might shift operations to a profitable gold mine. And right now, gold is doing pretty well because of the political climate. But let's talk about vision. Not a cute mission statement, not corporate wallpaper. I mean real vision. The kind Jim Rohn described when he said, you cannot change your destination overnight, but you can change your direction overnight. Vision gives you direction. Today, I'm going to connect four minds, a Harvard historian, a biblical king, a Jewish banker, and a temple psalmist, and show you how their insights reveal vision as the highest form of leadership wealth. Let's start with Niall Ferguson, the British historian who wrote The Ascent of Money. I really recommend this book, but it's a huge book. It took me quite a while to get through it. He didn't just explain how money works, he unpacked how societies rise and fall based on their leadership, credit, interests, risks, and trust, human trust. Here's the question Ferguson would ask today: do you understand how money actually works, or are you just using it? Sometimes I forget how far I've come in terms of asset management and thinking about how things cash flow. I majored in economics and then I had a career, and I wasn't very good at managing my own finances. I was on the hedonistic treadmill. I hope I can help you to avoid the hedonistic treadmill where you're getting into huge payments. And I created a lot of heuristics and shortcuts today. Today I was getting my hair cut, and the person cutting my hair, I felt like they were hoping to get a better tip by telling me that they'd never go on vacations. They couldn't go to Leavenworth with their kids because they have to work two jobs to be able to make their car payments. Now, the wealthiest people I know often drive 20-year-old cars. And when you think about Warren Buffett, one of the most successful and wealthiest of all time, he drives that old Cadillac, right? I buy an occasional new Brooks Brothers suit, but I also like to save money and buy everything on discount. And I've read that this is one of the things that the millionaire next door does, right? There's that book, The Millionaire Next Door. If I spent full retail at Nordstrom's on my wardrobe, I would have to get a second job and I'd be at the poor farm, or I would be cutting hair to make ends meet and not able to go on vacations, because how you do one thing is how you do everything. Just like the person who cut my hair today. Think about that. Most people never stop to examine the systems they live under. They work for money, worry about money, but never develop vision through money. Ferguson shows us that money is not wealth, trust is, relationships are, timing is. If you want to build peace and power in your leadership, you need to ask, what systems do I participate in unconsciously? Where do I need financial literacy to lead wisely? Am I striving or architecting? And striving is an interesting word that Arthur Brooks used too. Strivers, we are the ones that get on the hedonistic treadmill. We are trying to keep up with the neighbors and get ahead of the people that we went to school with. And who pays? Well, you pay. And one of the ways you can pay is by not seeing your systems and living by somebody else's rules. And that brings me to one of my mentors, Joe Bauer, and what he says. He says, you can achieve your dream if you have one, but are you living a life by design or a life by default? Let's design our lives. Now think about Asaph, the temple musician and psalmist. He wrote some of the most honest pieces in the Bible. Psalms 73 through 83 about injustice, envy, and the mystery of God's ways. In Psalm 73, he confesses, I envied the arrogant when I saw the prosperity of the wicked. Honestly, this is what sparked part of my interest in doing this podcast today as I read that. And in modern times, we might say keeping up with the Joneses or the Kardashians, depending on how old you are. Joneses, when I was young, 20s, Kardashians weren't around yet. But then Asaph says, until I entered the sanctuary of God, then I understand their final destiny. Here's what Asaph is teaching us. Peace doesn't come from having more, but from seeing deeper. Vision without moral clarity is a weapon, but vision with spiritual grounding becomes a tool for justice, wisdom, and generational leadership. Ask yourself, do I envy or do I understand? Is my vision rooted in eternal values or temporary success? What would Asaph say about how I interpret my success and pain? Next up, the Rothschilds. The Rothschilds I got reinvigorated on. I was staying with my wife in a castle and on the Loire Valley, and they had owned it at one point, and the crest was in the ceiling, and it was really neat. A fantastic breakfast we talk about all the time, and just so lucky. And it's in Rick Steves' book if you want to look it up, Chateau de Pré. Anyway, you may know the Rothschilds as Europe's most powerful banking family of the 19th century. They are also featured in Niall Ferguson's book, in the book Ascent of Money. They weren't just rich, they were strategic. And in my very first podcast, I talked about Napoleon, all the things that he accomplished from Egypt all the way to the Kremlin and Venice. And he just went everywhere, and it had to be financed through strategy like what the Rothschilds provided. But what's awesome about the Rothschilds is that during the Napoleonic Wars, the Rothschilds used networks, timing, and information to move capital and funds for whole nations. They practiced trust at the family level and coordinated vision across borders. What can we learn from them? Vision must be collective and collaborative and generational. When I was a kid at grade school, teachers talked about cooperation. If I could start over with my kids, I would be more interested in teaching them about how to collaborate. Collaboration is a turbocharger of finance, and it's the way that you execute a grand vision. Nobody executes a grand vision by themselves. Too many people are building a career. I believe you should be building a legacy system, one that outlives you. And leadership is one of the only ways I know to do that. It multiplies through others, right? Leadership is about others and adding value to others. So ask yourself, who am I building with? What am I doing to preserve and pass on the vision? Am I more focused on position or posterity? When you look to build something that lasts, you may need to take risk, but you'll also consider those things that might be missed by somebody who just wants to please shareholders in the next quarter. When we do that, look to just get to the next quarter numbers. Sometimes we can get into an area where we're making decisions that do not give us a return on our leadership investment decisions, but in fact set us up to try to spin things instead of creating real long-run value. I have been in a position as a market researcher where we were having to spin things and look at image and related things in terms of business and wisdom. King Solomon is one of the top. The ultimate example of vision meeting power is Solomon. When given the chance to ask God for anything, Solomon didn't just ask for riches or revenge. He asked for wisdom, and with it came peace, influence, and global prosperity. Solomon's vision wasn't just internal. He expanded trade routes and solved disputes and created systems of justice that made Israel a magnet for other rulers. He proved something we often forget. Vision multiplies wealth, but wisdom multiplies peace, and sometimes your own peace. So here's the critical question for you as a leader. Do you want income or insight? Many smart people in the market research industry think the word insight is critically important. It leads to a clear vision. I was on the board for the Northwest region for the Market Research Association, and they thought the word insight was so important, the Market Research Association changed its name to the Insight Association. So are you making leadership investment decisions with insight? That's LIDS with insight, leadership investment decisions. That leads to vision and wisdom. And are you doing that, or are you just reacting? What's your Solomon moment, the defining moment where you stop asking for more and start asking for meaning? Because how you do anything is how you do everything. And if you don't start thinking about meaning and incorporating it into your decision making, you never will. It's kind of like when you first start your first job, you should work on saving because you won't do it later if you don't build the habit now. So when you think of employees and who they want to follow, who is it? Someone who's in it just for the money, or somebody who's trying to create meaning and peace and get people home to their family so they can tell exactly what great things your organization is doing? So just so I don't bury the punchline, vision is leadership wealth. Wealth is not just monetary. There are at least 23 different forms of wealth that I wrote about in my book, but at the top of them all is vision. Vision lets you seize opportunities, unify teams, seeing around corners, create peace where there was chaos. And a mentor of mine, Bill Albee, who just passed away, was a genius at using humor when things were becoming oppositional. His humor brought people back to collaborate. Vision helps a leader not to just see political climate and industry trends, but actionably looks at the trends in the boardroom, in the meeting, in the moment, right in the parking lot, in the community. Does a leader who's loved by his employees and community do better or worse than the one who is looking for those quarterly results? And I can guarantee you that a person like Bill Albee was invited to things because he brought a brightness and sunshine to what he did that was fun and collective and collaborative, a collaborative vision. You're not just rich, you're powerful. You've hit the pinnacle of purpose-driven leadership when you add a little bit of vision. So let me ask you, What is your vision for peace, for your team, for your family, for your business? Have you blown the lid off your leadership, or are you still living under one? And are you building wealth or just chasing money? Leadership without vision is just motion. Vision with wisdom, that's legacy. And if you want to develop vision as an asset, go to beauleadershipgroup.com and request my book, or look into one of our masterclasses on leadership investment decisions. Because when you understand vision, money stops being your master and starts becoming your tool. So remember, Solomon was a man, not just a running shoe or ski manufacturer. See you next time. You've invested another 13 minutes in your leadership and influence. Use it well for a return on your leadership investment decisions. Thank you. Till next time.